In times where everything must be finished yesterday and machine minds can create perfection before you even blinked, I prefer another pace. I sit down, I step aside, I do something slower, stranger, newer. Not to compete, not to keep up, but to remember the act of making is why I began this journey in the first place. And what might come of it, that's secondary. It may be good, it may be bad, both are acceptable. The idea? A mixed media animation, comfortable enough to feel like home, but open enough to invite experiments, detours, and occasional happy accident. I need a plan, or better, a story, otherwise I will get lost in technical details and nothing will make sense. So here it is. A man sits at his desk, daydreaming, half asleep. The phone rings, he jolts, misses the call. Now awake, his colleague peeks over the cubicle, he's the one who called. The protagonist leans forward, taps the keyboard to wake the screen. Nothing. His friend, curious about his reaction, watching his struggle with the computer. The protagonist tries waking up the screen again, still nothing. Then suddenly the computer expands, impossibly, and swallows him whole. Just a nightmare? Perhaps. This dreamlike setup gives me space to play with composition, with shapes, with different media, without worrying about it feeling out of place. The approach is simple. Begin with a scene inside my comfort zone to build a solid foundation. From there, I can push further, experimenting and iterating on the fly, adding new techniques where they fit and refining with familiar skills when needed. After all, I want to have an artwork that feels finished, even though I explored unknown waters. For this journey, one of my main anchors will be using printers to have a base to work on. In the past, I loved using a thermo printer for black and white stickers. Since it uses heat instead of ink to print, it carries a unique aesthetic which I think will shine depending on the source material. Add to that markers, pencils, digital paint overs, and the result has the potential to become a rich, layered mixed media animation. While building a scene, I focus on a clear shape language, not just because some of my mixed media tools like the thermo printer have technical limitations, but because strong shapes help the viewer read what's happening. Even when the effects get chaotic, the rule I try to follow here: low poly models to shape the scene and textures to round off the detail level. I start with a blockout for the usual objects you might find in an office cubicle. Most of them can stay low poly, but the computer needs extra geometry for the simulation I have planned. Too little and it won't feel organic or work at all. Too much and the simulation takes too much time and resources. And also won't give me the clear shapes I want. To test the setup for the simulation emotion, I drop in a placeholder Mixamo animation and run a quick clothing sim on the computer. This stage exposes flaws early, saving me from wasting hours on polished models and animations that might not serve the scene. After a couple of iterations on the settings for the sim and models, the technical side is set. That frees me to focus on the artistry, refining all the models and adding more where needed. I start with the desk, shelves, chair, bin, some binders and books, and lastly of course the devilish computer, the centerpiece of the action. The hand-painted textures that I made in Procreate bring it all together, and the blank canvas starts to feel alive. Some strokes for the table, a quirky pattern for the chair, and some neat details in the background. To get more out of the contrast, I also make sure my color scheme is clear and only uses a limited range. For now, it's cold blues and warm yellows. Next comes the main character. You might recognize him from past animations, a figure of void, sharply dressed in his sleek suit. His reactions are quick, almost theatrical, dozing off, jolting awake, hammering the keyboard, then staring in disbelief at the impossible unfolding before him. This time, I'm working with a different, more elaborate rig with the Mixamo add-on for Blender. A few quickly placed keyframes already take me 90% of the way there. The last 10%, minor tweaks once the clothing sim settles. And again, using references is key here. Makes it easier to work on and the look is more believable. Next comes the expansion effect of the computer. I used the SimplyCloth Studio plugin with the pressure preset. From the earlier tests, I already know roughly what to look out for. I adjust some of the settings that come with it, like stiffness, shrink factor and self-collision distance. After that, I add a cube around the scene with a collision modifier to keep the sim contained. If I don't use a container, the expansion will continue and most likely crash Blender faster than you can lead the default cube. To see what is going on inside of it though, I switch the viewport display to wire. Lastly, subdivision levels are crucial. Too high and the simulation turns to a slug. Too low and it does not expand organically. Additionally, I set the simulation start to frame 354. This ensures the simulation only starts at the exact moment my character presses the keyboard. After dialing everything in, adding some more collision modifier to the character and some objects in the scene, the animation finally does what I imagined. The result? Soft, rounded, strangely appealing. Kind of reminds me of mochi eyes. With the 3D work done, I can now prepare the files for printing and overpainting. First though, I review previous experiments. For projects in the past, I used small-scale tests to figure out if the concept works before having to commit fully. Pretty handy if you ask me, especially when having to paint, scan and edit over 100 frames by hand. The experiments vary, different story, composition, contrast levels and post-processing. Some refined with marker strokes, others exploring playful textures, ripping and gluing paper. Photoshop post-processing produces mixed results, some ideal for basic textures, others giving a more stylized look. One clear insight emerged. Images with high contrast but the narrow gray range works best for the basic texture with the thermoprinter. Too dark or too flat and the base becomes muddy. Marker details get lost. Not following a clear pattern while cutting and gluing normal printed frames makes the animation noisy. I also realized that the initial result of the tests did not feel final. It always needed additional editing to reach the image I have in my head. So with some last but final tinkering, the result I came up with looks something like this. It took a minute, but I started to see the potential in it. Now it's time to roll up the sleeves and start the real animation. First, I need the animation rendered as single frames. In Blender it's straightforward, with switching the file format to JPEG or PNG in the output menu. Then the frames go into Photoshop next. For the thermoprinter, I strip all color, adjust contrast, play with the threshold and value, less guesswork, more experimentation. For the regular printer, making the images slightly lighter gives more room to adjust later after scanning. I don't export the whole animation, only the key moments until the end. No point in letting the whole sequence go crazy, it wouldn't serve the story. Now, the frames are ready to print. Printers at the ready, paper loaded, files sent. While they hum, I gather my tools. Markers, pencils, scalpel, whatever I can hold. The printers are done, one last quality check, and then the tedious, delightful task begins. Coloring, cutting and gluing over 100 frames by hand. Sounds fun, right? I scribble, loose, chaotic, not precise. I cut and glue, precise in shape but rough around the edges if needed. The goal isn't perfection, it is to be more loose and to embrace the analog nature of this process. Varying stroke patterns while painting create energy, while staying close to the original shape keeps it coherent. Different shades of color add contrast, but the color itself, secondary. That can be adjusted later. Hours pass and the frames accumulate, but now time to slice and get it ready for scanning. But one thing, my scanner is slow. No feeder, I need high DPI because the slices are small. So patience is required. Hours later, all scans are ready and I only need to arrange them digitally. Why go through all of this? For a minuscule effect. Because the imperfections matter. Varying print results, paper misfeeds, slight pressure variations while drawing, dull plates while cutting, tiny scratches or dust while scanning. All of it builds a texture that no digital filter can touch. It's the subtle chaos of reality, something machine perfection can never replicate. And that, in the end, is exactly why it's worth it. Even though I love the chaos of the hand-painted and reassembled results, some digital adjustments are still necessary. Contradicting myself? Perhaps, but with a bit of love for post-processing, I get closer to a result that works for the vision I have in my head. On top of the initial batch, I drew a few extra frames for the moment the phone rings. Just a handful, but enough to tease the full effect later. Altogether, I have now around 400 frames, plenty of flexibility to experiment. For editing, I turn to Photoshop. The frames go in as JPEGs. I turn to the timeline. The frame rate is rarely correct by default, so I adjust it manually. The original 3D animation was rendered at 12 FPS, so I matched it for the hand-painted frames as well. First, the regular printed variant. To see the effect properly, I animate the position and scale of the hand-painted sequence, fitting it neatly into the 1920 to 1920 frame. The scan softened the contrast, so I bring it back, shift the palette with selective color because a clean color scheme is important, and fine-tune the colors with a selective color effect. Next comes the thermoprinter layer. It has a great feel to it, but needs refining to fit the design language. I strip the color, adjust the contrast and use a threshold filter to make the texture more crisp and reduce the overall noise, but I want to take it a step further. Alone, it feels incomplete, so that's where a flat shape layer comes in, which is created partially from the original render and some other scan textures. I experiment until the look is bold, high contrast and confident. Combined, the flat shapes and thermoprinter textures start to click. Not too shabby, but best used sparingly only for specific moments. To round it off, I take the 3D render as a base, select a few frames and paint directly over them with noisy brushes. A bit of comic lettering, an eke here, a squeak there, maybe a kavoosh for good measure, and all the pieces fall into place. Now for the final cut. As planned from the start, I apply the mixed media effects only to the dramatic moments. Sprinkling them everywhere would muddy the story. Being intentional matters. For that, I turn to Premiere Pro and start assembling all the individual sequences. On top, a little sound design, a touch of polish, and the ultimate mixed media animation is done. Take a peek! So this is the result. Some parts turned out exactly as I expected, others not so much. It was a valuable experience, trying new things without a clear goal. I learned new techniques, yes. But more importantly, I learned to look at my art differently and don't focus so much on perfection and embrace the analog. There's no button that gives the correct result, no silver platter to present the finished piece neatly. It's trial and error, inventing solutions for ideas that are unusual, unexpected or just plain stubborn. A process that in the current digital age will likely be overlooked. Only a small niche will truly dedicate themselves to it. And yet it has lessons for everyone. A workflow as flexible as your imagination. Miss one tool, replace it with another. It's a gentle reminder of why we started. The joy of making something with our own hands. The pleasure of shaping it with imagination. The kind of small tactile delight that no filter, no algorithm and no perfectly calibrated machine can ever replicate.